Wonder Woman was a one-of-a-kind movie where nobody needed to act. About time this is something we're allowed to say. Her Power Ranger posing and making faces like she's trying to do Zoolander impressions seemed to deceive everyone into thinking that was a good movie, when in reality it was a subpar movie that happened to look good, because when you're a 5 in a sea of DC 3s, you look like an 8. Now they want her to sing? That mirror should have shattered in Act 1. Snow Whitey and the 7 people who watch this movie is about a strong, independent woman who solves all her problems with ease and treats everyone like her slaves. But hey, she remembers her name, so everyone stood up and clapped and she got the Medal of Honor. They attached a bunch of laid-off bandits for character bloat, and the prince is now a homeless guy who wandered on set in a hoodie, yet everyone does even less than they did in the original cartoon, including the new characters. Why are the dwarves CGI, or even better, why are the voice actors for the dwarves not all dwarves? Look, I'm not a firm believer of you must look like who you voice act. That's their rules. That would take away the most iconic voice acting role in history, James Earl Jones as Darth Vader, and we would have been robbed in the current era because they would have said he is not a white man or a lion in real life. Thank goodness the 70s were a far more progressive decade where color didn't matter. But these are the people who tell you someone called Snow White, German folklore, in a live-action adaptation of a movie where she is, one dare might say, white as snow, does not need to remotely look like a character, and also why is she wearing a dress from a grade school costume box? She couldn't borrow a better-looking Disneyland costume? Well, the same people who demand of voice actors are the same in every way as whoever they're voicing, and this isn't a suggestion. They've kicked people out of roles they've had for years in order to fix this, citing that you can only empathize with and correctly portray a role if you have the same skin color. What a lovely message on race relations these people are spreading. How does the prince not get arrested? Isn't he stalking Snow White? I mean, that's what Snow White said. Her words, not mine. If the modern retelling is that he's a weird creep, why is he walking free? How could this ever have been a good idea? Making a live-action rendition of a movie when your company hates everything that movie stands for now. If she looked like Snow White, this would have still been a disaster. Looks, even for a character whose name for her skin, could have survived. The personality, however, is almost oppositional. Snow White, let's not forget, was one of Disney's earliest major triumphs, and a real absolute triumph, not the bootlicking way Hollywood media refers to every single modern Disney movie today as. She is a feminine icon. She portrayed a very beloved role that started off the Disney princesses almost a century ago. By the way, a brand of female characters that is extremely loved by a young female audience. Role models for girls for nearly 100 years. For all the critique that has levied their way today as modern princesses continue to not resonate with any audience, the Disney princess brand is bigger than Barbie. The one day my prince will come is still a resounding message that women of all ages believe in. The words are just a little different now. Now it is, one day my 6 feet, 6-figure, 6-pack will come. And after he comes, he goes home to rest since tomorrow's princess is in another castle. The original Snow White is still being watched by children to this day. This live-action movie isn't going to last beyond the content creator's attention span for something to mock. And we're a week from Minecraft digging her somewhere to be put to rest as the children's yearn for the Jack Black playing Jack Black experience. Consider this. What if Snow White didn't show off her black heart for the entire media cycle, going after fans, hating on the original movie, mocking the story, denigrating her male co-lead? What if she'd been pleasant? Or, if she is incapable of that, silent. Look, pissing off half the audience because of politics and most of the nostalgia audience because you hate the original story is obviously a stupid idea. Notice nobody is making movies and declaring, this is not for you filthy commies. Not only are you ruining your own career, although in Hollywood maybe she's 4D chess because this seems to get you promotions and better jobs, especially at Disney. But you are sinking the entire ship with you. Everyone in the movie is harmed solely due to your behavior. If any of these narcissists ever cared for the people who aren't making millions on the movie and whose livelihoods depend on the movie industry not shrinking at breakneck speeds due entirely to the horrible behavior of their wealthiest members. Why does Disney keep hiring people to do this? Some people are acting like she went Maverick. No, it's pure cope to say they didn't realize she'd be this antagonistic when every vocal Disney actor and person in a major position is doing the exact same thing. Come to terms. This is what Hollywood wants. This is their ideal Snow White. Now, I do have some respect for them getting roasted so hard by South Park over the put a chicken at make her lame and gay, turning their company into a global laughingstock, then taking their obvious pandering to an even higher level in response. But what if an honest go was made of this? Alternative universe, real dwarf actors as a start. You had the easiest possible opportunity to represent a marginalized group that does not get a large amount of roles. And it would have been an authentic way that nobody could argue with. You get easy DEI score, and you get to act out your white savior complex without being called out. So you can make black Vikings, black Cleopatra, black samurai, but you can't make dwarven dwarves? This is a rare, nobody can argue with this inclusion of a minority moment. Guess what? That's why it didn't happen. Black Cleopatra, that got Netflix sued by Egypt itself for historical vandalism. It was so egregious. It's specifically to alter history and piss off the culture it's attacking. But making the dwarves would not have bothered anyone. So that form of minority representation does not matter at all to activists. And this movie proves that. Secondly, to make this good film, keep the theme simple and straightforward. Focus on this being about envy and control of an evil queen versus generosity and kindness. It is very clear they wanted to turn this into a woman power story, since that's the only story they seem to know how to tell now. A prince saves a princess would be very difficult for them. The idea of a man having any value at all is like garlic to a vampire, and the man saving the woman a silver bullet to a werewolf. It makes it look like you cannot think an inch beyond your own nose when you try to make a film about how women deserve to have power, when the very baseline of the story is how an entire kingdom gets ruined and turns to tyranny the moment a woman takes power. It also must have been very hard on them to show the misery being a result of high taxes and forced conscription. Kinda based. Most of all, what if Snow White was Snow White? Graceful, grateful. When she is freeloading with the dwarves, she is doing her part to cook and clean rather than sitting back and relegating duties like a dictator. Dainty and elegant, with a sense of fun and magic and whimsy that has entranced people for almost 90 years. The very blueprint for Disney princesses. An idealized, aspirational woman who is kind, clever, adored by all. They fear the audience they are courting, hates their traditions. That nobody would be interested in a story about a graceful, hardworking, kind woman targeted by an envious, cruel, and violent woman who hates and blames everyone, and despite her position of extreme, undeserved power and privilege. Now I can understand in an era where nobody is able to act anything but themselves anymore, why you can't find a good Snow White. But come on, you had a treasure trove of natural evil queens at your disposal. Instead, you have a movie where a queen and Snow White are competing for fairest of them all, which no longer has anything to do with beauty, because even in the level of delusion Disney has reached, they had no faith there was enough suspension of disbelief in the known galaxy to sell the mere simping for Snow White. Instead, it's about what is in their heart. But frankly, if that's the case, the beauty thing would have been more believable. There's about as much chemistry in this movie as whatever comes before hydrogen on the period table. Hollywood. Nobody is expecting you to find a natural Snow White in your neck of the woods, considering you like to paint them red before they have a license and can escape. No intent to start making good movies again, huh? Well then, guess your industry is just going to fall apart. When your job is to entertain and you refuse to do that, and the way you do it is by acting, and you cannot do that, you cannot and do not want to do your job, and your audience is giving fewer and fewer fucks about trying to convince you to turn this Titanic around before it hits the 15th iceberg.